Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Nadine. It's wonderful to see everyone, new friends, old friends, and to discuss this very topic that's very dear to my heart. My name is Nagla Riz. I'm the founding director of the Access to Knowledge for Development Center at the School of Business of the American University in Cairo. We are very proud to be the MENA hub for a feminist AI research network, MENA FAIR Hub for short. Let me take the 10 minutes that I have, or maybe a few extra couple of minutes, to tell you a few things about us, or a few words about us, and also about the network and the meeting. A2K4D is now 12 years old, soon to be 13. We are based at the AUC School of Business. It's a regional hub for research on issues related to the role of knowledge, digital technologies, and their impact in promoting inclusive development, with focus on Egypt, the Arab world, and Africa. The center, as I said, will be turning 13 soon. We are engaged in policy-oriented research that is interdisciplinary and focuses on issues such as digital platforms, new business models, future of work, or what I like to call the reality of work, including gig work, innovation, open data practices, artificial intelligence, gender and inclusion in the digital economy. Right now, we are engaged in 4 research tracks. In no special order, I list them. One of them is governing responsible data and artificial intelligence for development in the MENA region, in partnership with Birzeit University. We are in Cairo here at A2K4D. We're developing an observatory for activities in the area of responsible data and AI in MENA, either the ones that we undertake or activities that are done by anyone and everyone working in this area. So we will be announcing that soon and welcoming input from everyone. The second track is, as I mentioned, what I would like to think of as new forms of work in the MENA region, looking at digitally enabled new forms of work, may that be cloud work or groundwork, what's narrowly defined as the gig economy. We already have activities in this area on the fair work practices in the gig economy in Egypt. But the larger project is looking at an expansion of these activities in the MENA region, and we have partners in the region. Third, we are the North African hub of the Open African Innovation Network, Open Air for short, where we've been working for more than 10 years now, almost 11 years, on open innovation in Africa. Last but not least, our 4th track is Feminist AI, where we house activities related to AI and feminism, different activities, and I will just mention a few under this umbrella. And we're very proud to be now the MENA hub for feminist AI. For example, we have undertaken a number of partnerships in this area, including actually members who are here today with us. With Friedrich Ebert Egypt, we have done a series of webinars after COVID, and webinars based on which we've done blogs, research, development into research activities. For example, we've done Women, Youth, and the Future of Work, Inclusion in Challenging Times in November 2020. We've done a webinar on women in data and code, gender inclusion in MENA's digital economy. I have asked our team to post links to these activities on the chat. Recently, we've had 2 recent workshops on women and work in Egypt's informal digital economy, evidence-based insights for policy making. We have had 2 workshops, one in the beginning, and then another one which we have held just a couple of weeks ago on research looking at female digital entrepreneurship, informal digital entrepreneurship in Egypt. We've also collaborated with Friedrich Ebert Regional Feminism Program on 2 workshops looking at, one of them was AI, ethics, and women as change agents, knowledge production, entrepreneurship, and innovation. And this particular one actually informed our document that's being written to present to the 2023 Commission on the Status of Women and the UN in March 2023, as I mentioned. And we also participated in a post-COVID feminist framework for digital justice in the MENA region as part of a Friedrich Ebert post-COVID feminist agenda series. Previously, we've done research on a gendered analysis of ride sharing in Egypt, which was published, and I think the link is showing up in the chat, as well as undertaking research on narratives around women, work, and technology, taking stock data and evidence on gender equality in digital access, skills, and leadership as part of the Equals Global Partnership. We've also done research on AI and gender in Africa. Again, just to mention a few of the networks that we are part of, I mentioned Open African Innovation Research Partnership. We're also part of the Equals Global Partnership on Gender and Technology. We're the Data for Development Network for the MENA region. We're the founding node of the Open Data for Development in MENA. We're also part of the Fair Work Network, looking at fair work practices in the gig economy with Oxford Internet Institute and partners all over the globe. We're part of the Harvard's Copyright X Teaching Network, the network of centers on Internet and society with Harvard's Berkman Klein Center and like-minded partners globally. We're part of the Access to Knowledge Global Activity. 8OK Global Academy. Sorry about that, as part with the Yale Law School's Information Society project, and again, like-minded partners all over the globe. Part of the Open for Good Alliance, the Global AI Narratives Network with Cambridge University. So as you see, we're very proud of our partnerships, and now is exceptionally proud with being, the MENA hub for feminist AI research. Through our work, we make an, it's very important for us to play a role in impacting local policy, but also in bringing the voice of the region to the global debates on issues that we are working on. This is very important, and trying to also impact global scholarship in that aspect. So let me say a few words about the topic of today. We are going to hear from experts. We're going to hear from global experts, and also get insights from our regional experts in related areas. But to me, feminist AI is really looking at transformation. For me, my definition of feminist AI is embracing principles of dismantling bias, intersectionality, accountability, inclusive and transparent use of power, responsible use of technology in social systems and in algorithms in a way that actually impacts our region. Technology can be used for good, but also it can exacerbate inequalities. And I think of fairness as not necessarily equality. Fairness goes a step further to ensure that no one is left behind. I know this sounds cliche, but people always talk about that, say content is king. I know what I'll say is cliche, but I like it, and maybe cheesy, but I like it. Context is queen. Content is king, but context is queen. Context in the global south is very important. That MENA is part of the conversation on these issues. We now have a MENA hub to work on these issues. MENA has multi-layered biases, multi-layered inequalities. We have digital and analog divides intertwined, and the threat of them being aggravated by AI. We have issues related to the digital access for women, tainted by cultural factors, and all over and above of our analog world realities, where we have the highest rates of unemployment, for example, of women globally, the region, MENA region, lowest female labor participation rate in the labor force, the lowest globally. We have highest unemployment rates for youth, the educated in a region that has a youth bulge. We have informal work, we have unpaid care work, we have women at the center of all of this. So what can we do as transformational so that technologies do not really undermine the status, not only of women, but of other groups in society? This is translated to invisibilities in data, invisibilities in algorithmic making, and we'll hear more about that from my colleagues. And given these distortions, feminist AI as transformational, a philosophy and epistemology of transformation for the different groups in society, tech constructs that properly reflect, express, and address realities on the ground. So as MENA Hub, we are very excited to be working on network building, bringing together a community of feminist AIs, raising awareness, creating a community working on these areas, and developing tangible research outputs. Towards the end of the workshop, we will announce more about a call for papers. In January, we're going to release a call for papers, looking at how AI can be harnessed to deliver equal outcomes, fair outcomes, and new opportunities, and actually how can feminist methodology and approaches be applied and be transformative when developing AI systems. How can we produce actionable research that will lead to the profound changes needed from scratch in the processes to produce and develop AI in MENA? More about that from my colleagues and from our wonderful speakers who would like to hear more from. But let me now move on. I think I have done well at 10.5 minutes. So I will move on to invite our wonderful colleague, Caitlin Kraft Bookman, who is the A+ Alliance Fair Hubs project leader. I mean, she is, I will read you her bio, but she will tell us about more about the network, about A+ Alliance, the Fair Hubs project activities, focus on automated algorithmic decision-making. Caitlin could not be with us in person, so we'll hear from her. 10-minute recording. Let me just say a few words about Caitlin. She is the founder of CEO and founder of Women at the Table, a growing global CSO based in Geneva, and the first organization to focus on systems change by helping women gain influence in sectors that have key structural impact. Caitlin curates a global international Geneva convening on gender and cities, notably the Smart Feminist City, which brought women at the table to its newest alliance, calling the A+ Alliance, Affirmative Action for Algorithms. I'm asking the team to post Caitlin. She has a long, long bio to post it on the chat. I'm just picking a few lines. Last but not least, she's also one of 3 co-founders with the former Director General of the UN and the former US Ambassador to the UN, both in Geneva. They founded the International Gender Champions, IGC, leadership network of female and male decision makers to break down gender barriers for system change. You can read more about Caitlin online or in the bio that I'm asking the team to post in the chat. I will stop there and I will ask the team, Khadija, to play a 10-minute video from Caitlin. Yeah, over to you. Thank you. I think the volume, can you hear Caitlin? I think there is an issue with the volume.
Yeah. Khadija, we can't hear her.
Hello, dear friends. It's so lovely to be here with you today. Sorry I'm not live, but I'm on video. But I wanted to share with you about the A+ Alliance, which is a global alliance of technologists, of activists, of academics, social scientists, as well as data scientists, who are looking to create a world where the already biased systems that we live with are not embedded into the future. So we're looking to create very proactively the future that we want to live in, want to live with, at the same time assuring that the biases that we're already living with don't come with us into the new world. So one of the way the A+ Alliance works is through its hubs. We have regional hubs. We are governed by a group of women at the table, but also Technological de Costa Rica. And then we have a regional hub in Latin America, which is led by Tecnológico de Monterrey. We have a regional hub in Southeast Asia, which you'll hear about from my colleague, Suraj Hongladoram, that's based at Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok. And we have this new MENA hub that we're so extremely excited about, that's led by Professor Nagla Risk and her fabulous team that you know so well at the American University of Cairo. So part of the A+ Alliance is this Feminist AI Research Network. That's the FAIR network, and that's actually how we do a lot of our outreach. Our advocacy is from the A+ Alliance, but our sub-granting and our applied research is done through the Feminist AI Research Network. And that's part of the reason that we're talking today because we're about to open up a new call that we're extremely excited about. But first, let me say that we've done 2 calls and we have 2 cohorts already working on these incredibly substantial issues. The first one mostly had submissions from Latin America and the Caribbean. All of those papers were so excellent, they're being turned into prototypes. One is a framework for feminist AI written by the team at Derechos Digitales. One is an NLP, natural language processing, contextual model to try and democratize the way that we look at bias in these systems. And it works to understand, actually to help, it's a tool to help give people an opportunity who are social scientists, who are academics, who are activists, but may not be technologists, to understand how the bias is creeping into certain kind of language systems. In their case, they're working with Latin American Spanish, but I do think there's also room for potential collaboration with folks who are working with Arabic as well. An example, that's from Via Libre, who are based in Argentina, also a very, very well thought of NGO, but the scientists are from the University of Cordoba. I'll give you an example about why we think this is so important. In a gendered language, such as Spanish, when you have gordo, gorda, so there's fat for male, fat for female, they discovered that for just a medical chatbot, just a regular application, people saying, I'm fat, what should I do, doctor? The gorda, well, the gordo, the male version, sent the man to a nutritionist, which makes total sense if he was overweight. But the version that was the female version of fat suggested that the woman go to a plastic surgeon. So we can see that here's bias at work in a most innocuous and actually hardly life and death application, but really would have really serious health consequences. So we think that that's a very, very interesting approach to looking at how bias is creeping into our languages. It also looks at what all the words are associated with migrants, what the words are associated with refugees, anything that you would want to research. So that's to democratize these systems and help get other social scientists involved in the work of technology. Because it is very much our belief that technology is too important to be left to technologists anymore. This is a multidisciplinary action that we all have to embark on together. We need all ideas at the table. We need everyone at the table. We need women, we need men, we need social scientists, we need anthropologists, behavioral economists, psychologists, data scientists, machine learning people, activists, social workers, everyone with lived experience who are going to be affected by these applications that are now being deployed really at velocity, at scale, by every government in the world. I must say that the third project, because I was just mentioning all the projects that we do have that's going to prototype in Latin America, is from Data Janeiro. And there they're working with a criminal court judge in Buenos Aires who has wanted to put his judgments on gender-based violence online, protecting, of course, the people who are in the discussion, but wanted to see whether if we could start to understand the way that gender-based violence was being dealt with in this criminal court, whether we could A, have insights, but B, stop feminicide, which is a particular problem all over the world, but especially in Latin America. So they work on with this judge. They have a really extraordinary platform that we'll be able to share with you in February. And they're starting to expand throughout Latin America, going to Mexico in their next judge and the next court there. We are also obviously doing capacity building. We're also doing, and what do we mean by that? What we really mean is of creating networks of people who are like-minded, who are engaged, who are interested. This is a field of technology that is being invented as we speak. It's going at vast scale. It's going so incredibly quickly, and we need all the minds we can around it, thinking about where we want it to go instead of just reacting to where it's going. And because of that, we're going in a weird way back to our roots for our third call in this grant that we have to automated decision-making, sometimes known as algorithmic decision-making, but we call it automated decision-making. And this is at play, even if you think that your particular municipality or government is not already sort of digitizing all of the different systems they have, but there's, even if it's on a legal pad with a pencil and it says these many people get pencils and these many people get pens, and this is the reason why, that's an equation, and that's all that an algorithm is an equation. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out what are new, more just, more useful, more 21st century, more targeted to the world that we live in, algorithmic decision-making processes that we could research and then deploy so that we can sort of bring a better quality of life to people. Because the entire idea of feminist AI is that all people are included. And this is AI that is only designed to help people. It's only AI that's about quality of life, and it's inclusion by design. And when we say inclusion, we mean everyone. We use gender as a way into the conversation, but we mean to help, to expand, to lift up the lives of all, and to leave no one behind, very much in the spirit of the SDGs. So this new call will be on automated decision-making. We're looking for new systems. There might be new models. There might be traditional models when from large families where the grandmother used to just decide, well, you have to stay in bed because you have a cold, and you should go out to work, and you should eat more food because you look too thin. Now that we have thousands, millions, billions of data points, we might be able to do more nuanced social protection, might be able to help people in a more fair, more interesting way. And this could be applied to university scholarships, basic school allocation, health services, to pensions, to any form of social protection, conditional cash transfer, housing lotteries. There are endless examples. We will have some of those examples up on our website when we open the call, but we want you to start thinking about it now, because the call will open in January. We will work with people. Maybe you're an activist, but you don't know a lot about technology, but you understand a system that needs to be built. We will help you try and find those technologists to help you. Maybe you're a technologist that understands the vast potential of these systems, but you don't know people with lived experience that actually understand the nuance in terms of the social work. We will help you find those people. We need to make interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary cohorts. We need to work together across disciplines, across regions, across universities, and across the globe, so that we can bring a better world, and we can make things, these tools that are meant to serve us, to help lift us all up and make sure that no one is left behind. So there we are. That's the A+ Alliance. Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening. And I wish you a wonderful webinar. Au revoir.
Well, I'm very grateful to Caitlin for her presentation. I think it helps us all, put things in perspective. And from Geneva, I am going to invite our colleague Suraj. We go all the way to Thailand. I'm going to invite our colleague Suraj Hongladarom, the Southeast Asia Fair Hub leader. He's going to tell us more about their experience, the activities, and the prototypes. Suraj is Professor of Philosophy and Director of the Center for Science, Technology, and Society at Chulalongkorn University. His areas of research include applied ethics, philosophy of technology, and non-Western perspectives on the ethics of science and technology. Suraj has a wonderful experience with the network. We're learning from Suraj, and I invite him to tell us a few words in the next few minutes. Suraj, over to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thanks a lot, Nagla. And can you hear me? Is the audio works? So I would like to share my screen if I'm allowed to do that, so that you can see the activity of what our group has been doing. So this is a provisional website. It's not up to the public yet, but it will be soon. It will be soon. It's almost finished. Only a few percent is left, rough edges here and there. So as Nagla and Kathleen have said, the project is a global project. We have 3 hubs. MENA is one, and Latin America and Caribbean, LAC, is one, and Southeast Asia, that is the hub that I'm looking at, is one. So we have 3 hubs. And the Southeast Asian hub covers basically the ASEAN countries. So we have Thailand, that's my country, and Vietnam, and Laos, and Cambodia, and Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines, and Myanmar. So we try to introduce the notion that Caitlin has wonderfully introduced to us about the role that AI can play in promoting a more equal society, a more inclusive society. So basically, I'm going to tell you what our group has done in the past year and going on to the second year, what our plan will be. So we start by talking a little bit about feminist AI. So basically, this is something that we have been talking about already in this webinar. We have 3 members. So this is myself and my colleague Supavadi, who is a professor of engineering at the same university where I'm working. And then my colleague Siraprabha, who is also a philosopher. She has been helping me in various ways, but her specialty is on social epistemology, whereas Supavadi's expertise is on electrical engineering and AI and programming. We have a publication which is the result of our regional work. It's not the result of the call for papers that Caitlin has talked about. That is separate. This is our own publication for people who responded to our own call for paper, so it's more local. But many of the chapters here are in English. When the website is up, you can click here and then you can get a PDF publication. And we have organized 6 network meetings altogether during the past year. The first one took place in October last year. We invited a colleague of Supavadi and of myself, Prodpran, who is also from engineering, and her colleague Napaporn from the Faculty of Computer Science. So we talked about the basic issues in computing and in how computing can contribute to a more equal society, especially when it comes to gender equality. And then we have some key issues discussed and then key recommendations. And then in January this year, we had our second meeting. My colleague from the Department of Linguistics, he's here, and he talked about gender bias in NLP, natural language processing. So he presented something like a very wide and very basic introduction, which is very useful for people like myself who, you know, I'm from philosophy, so I'm not in a technical area at all. But I'm interested in the problem of justice and equality. And then, you know, listening to my colleague Attapon, his name is Attapon, talking about how gender bias, you know, which is, you know, a social and ethical concept can be found in NLP, which is a very technical area. It's very interesting. And this kind of follows from what Caitlin has said about the role that AI can play in promoting a more, you know, awareness and consciousness of the way computer and technology and AI can be intertwined in many ways, in various ways, with social and ethical problems such as gender equality and class equality, economic equality, and so on. So we held our third meeting in May this year, and we invited our colleague from the Philippines, Hazel Biana, and her colleague Rosalia Domingo, to talk about their project. And this is one of the projects which is supported by the general call for papers that Caitlin talked about. We are about to issue the third call for paper, as Caitlin said, next month, next year in January. But as a result of the second call, which was issued several months ago, we had this wonderful project on AI and mobility, where the objective is to find a way in which AI can be used in mobile apps so that women who travel alone by public transportation in a big city like Manila in the Philippines, you know, more than 10 million people, or Jakarta in Indonesia, also the same, you know, more than 10 million people, can find, you know, safety and peace of mind when they travel alone, no matter what time it is, which is a big problem in big cities in Southeast Asia. So they are looking for ways to harness the power of AI to help in that regard. So that was our network meeting. It was wonderful. We learned a lot. And then the fourth meeting that we had, we invited a colleague, Jun E Tan, from Malaysia. She is a researcher in AI governance and AI policy. So she talked about AI governance and the policy of AI especially in the region of Southeast Asia. So it's more focused on the social science in this talk. And then going on to the fifth meeting, we had a talk with my colleague Eleanor Fournier-Toombs from Canada and her colleague Matthew Daly from AIT, Asian Institute of Technology in Bangkok. And they talked about gender sensitive AI policy. So a mix between AI, you know, technical area and the policy governance issue, legal issue in AI. Very, very interesting. So we also held a capacity building workshop in May, where we introduced the basic concepts that are necessary when we would like to talk more or talk systematically about feminist AI. Because we found that people in this region, either they are computer scientists, so they know how to do coding, but they don't know anything about social issues, or they are social activists, or social scientists or philosophers who know a lot about equality and justice and so on, but they don't know much, if at all, about AI and so on. So we try to, it's a capacity building workshop. We try to get these two groups of people together to talk with each other and to share their basic concepts, which we believe is very necessary for our world today, because as Caitlin and Nagla has said, AI has become such a powerful presence, powerful tool in today's world. So basically, this is what we have done during the past year, and we look forward to the next call for proposals, which will be issued next month and next year. So basically, this is what I would like to share to you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Suraj. This is a wonderful presentation, and we stand to learn a lot from you and your team and the rest of the hubs. I'm very excited to be part of this network. So thank you so much. So now from Thailand, we come back to the MENA region, and let's zoom in on what on our region here and where to go forward. I invite my colleague Nadine Waheba, our Associate Director for Research and Global Networks at the Center, to to lead us through the next part of the webinar with our wonderful speakers. So over to you, Nadine.
Thanks, Dr. Nagla, and thank you, Professor Suraj and Caitlin. So now we will turn to our two speakers from the MENA region, who we're very excited to have with us today. And if you first allow me to introduce them, just in alphabetical order, we have Amira Salah Ahmed, who is a Cairo-based director and producer, writer and editor, and former journalist, who has worked in the media space for the past 20 years. As WOMENA's chief media officer and executive producer, Amira has been leading the team on editorial production, monetization, and growth strategy since 2018, pivoting the company to focus on impact-driven media and storytelling with a feminist lens. She has more than 15 years of experience as a journalist and editor and media entrepreneur in Egypt, writing for local and international publications, as well as being one of the co-founders of Mada Masr. Our following speaker, who we're very happy to have with us today, is also Nadine, but Nadine Maawad. Nadine is a feminist techie researching artificial intelligence and digital economies on a Mozilla Tech and Society Fellowship. She's also part of the grant-making design circle at the Numoon Fund, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, for feminist tech, and the Platform Cooperatives Consortium, platform.coop, C-O-O-P, and is also a fan of the Interledger Protocol and collaborating with Al-Mawrid Al-Thaqafi on Culture 3.0. So very happy to have Amira and Nadine with us today. So we are going to have 2 rounds of questions, and then we'll follow that with our Q&A. Our first round is 15 minutes. Again, just to repeat to the audience, if you have any questions and you'd like to post them in the Q&A, please do so and we'll answer them in the session. Or if you'd like to say something or that sort of thing, you can raise your hand also in the Q&A session and we'll be able to take your question then. All right, so our first round. In our first round, we basically want to talk about what is feminist AI and what does it mean in the context, like we've spoken several times already today about context. What does it mean in the context of the Middle East and North Africa? And to get sort of an idea of what is happening now in terms of feminist technologies in the region. So if you allow me to ask Nadine first, as a feminist and a techie, in the context of MENA, how would you explain what is feminist AI, or what does it mean? And why is it important? And if you could give us also some examples. Nadine, you have about 7 minutes. Go
ahead. Thank you, Nadine. I'm very happy to be with you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm sort of, I think, on the tangent or on the margin of the work that you folks are doing in this network and with the hubs around feminist AI. I take this as a learning opportunity for myself to understand how different folks are thinking about it. I will agree very strongly with Caitlin that this is a rapidly moving, shifting world, to the point where it's hard for us to wrap our brains around how quickly things are changing. But I will also disagree with Caitlin on some of the approaches, and I take this as an opportunity for us to think together, because honestly, nobody has any idea. I appreciate that folks are depending on philosophical frameworks, sociological frameworks, but what is coming, I think, for humanity is impossible to predict, but necessary to try sort of all approaches towards ensuring this future that we share commonly, a future that is fair for women. But I will be honest and tell you I'm worried, very worried about what this future entails and how can we possibly keep up from the region. But I'll tell you the story of my research and how I got here. I started researching a couple of years ago the effect of the digital economy on artistic labor, the creative community in the Middle East and North Africa. Particularly, I looked at musicians and writers. It was a context of the pandemic. Artists were sitting at home. They lost huge incomes. At the same time, the digital economy was rising. And I appreciate very much the resources you've shared on fair work. I love this rating system. I see none of them passed. I hope you can do a similar kind of rating system for Lebanon and the apps we have here. As I was researching, I thought that my focus would be on the gig economy and that the gig economy would be around for 10, 20, 30 years as a certain morph of capitalism. I don't think so anymore. I think the gig economy is very quickly disappearing and morphing into automation. In fact, the gig economy is a stepping stone towards training the algorithm to take over our jobs. Among them, for example, our friends, the interpreters on this call, their jobs are threatened by the very enactment of them interpreting, because as they interpret, they are training machines that will take over interpretation. We all do it all the time. Nobody is spared, from the Uber driver training the machine to drive the car itself, to the person who logs into Google Translate, to whoever uses Google Docs. And I'm sure you have all freaked out as you see Google Docs. Complete your research sentences to a very excellent kind of degree. We saw this in the arts and culture, shockingly in August, with Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, DALL-E. I'm sure you all saw visuals of, you can ask the algorithm to create any kind of visual. Very soon you will see the launch of movies, so that you can tell the machine, play me a movie about whatever, and then you will see an actual movie created in front of you. Perhaps the most ironic domain is for programmers themselves. Computer programmers are programming themselves out of jobs into the future. And you can imagine, as one starts reading this, they start to worry about different domains of work. What is conspiracy and what is science, what is an accurate prediction and what is a bit, losing your mind, thinking about what's going to happen. I've been trying my best to think about domestic labor in the age of robots, about care work in the age of machines, ChatGPT, character.ai, where you can create people to have relationships with, etc. But I say all of this to say that I am not sure using the same approach as gender mainstreaming that we have used in the past 30 years, since Beijing. We tried to do gender mainstreaming to a lot of existing frameworks, governments, businesses, development, aid, human rights. We went on a mission about 30 years ago. Let's do a gender audit. Let's do a gender checklist. How do you make sure women are included? How do you make sure? I feel that this approach you talk about with respect to feminist AI kind of does the same thing, no? We take how do we understand women within the AI? How do we make sure it is intersectional? Do we want to feed the data sets Black and brown faces? Or do we want Black and brown faces to maybe not be part of the data sets? There are cases where, the self-driving car might hit someone on the road if they don't recognize it as a person, in which case this is a disaster situation. But there are also cases of surveillance where a lot of this data, if it is not open and public, transparent, and accountable, all of the values you have put in, leads us or morphs us into a sort of surveillance economy. And I will show you the book I have been obsessed with now, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, came out of Harvard. So it's not necessarily a left-wing book like my preference, but it lays out an excellent sort of imagination or analysis of the economy that we live under today. And I want to make this link between a surveillance economy that AI is a core part of, بمعنى إنه if our livelihoods, our food, our transportation, our meeting right now, our access to Gmail and Google, etc., is sort of governed under the surveillance economy, we can expect it to influence our activism, our thinking, and the sort of feminism that today dominates our movements. So just to say, I think an approach to feminist AI must make sure that feminist critical thinking, feminism that looks at structural problems, that not only looks at gender or women within economies, but feminism that looks at structural kind of problems and thinks about automation as liberation for women from a lot of jobs that we are forced to do, but are not necessarily jobs that allow us to do what we love best, has to think about feminism under the influence of surveillance and what it has done to our movements, what it has done to all of you in academia, how the surveillance economy also mandates the kind of knowledge you produce, the kind of thinking that you have, etc. I will stop here because it's 7 minutes and maybe I can come back to a few additional points.
Thank you so much, Nadine. Yes, you will have exactly, you were naturally moving on to speak about the future and the way forward, and that's what we're going to do in our next round. So that's great. You'll have time to do that. If I may ask Amira now, Amira, MENA, your platform is a feminist media company and adopts a feminist lens. Based on your experiences from MENA and your wider experiences and engagement with the larger community in the region, can you tell us a bit about artificial intelligence or algorithmic decision-making technologies, how in their current form if they pose any challenges to a feminist lens or the feminist focused projects or initiatives that you're working on?
Yes, hi, thank you for having me. I think I'd like to take one step back to frame a little bit what I'm going to say, and I'll explain kind of what MENA does and how this relates to the question that you just asked. So MENA has been around for 8 years, and we've worked with women across the region on many levels. We focused in the beginning on investment and entrepreneurship, and then over time we developed more into a media platform, and we focus very much on impact-driven storytelling. I can talk a little bit about what we found, and in that way, how it's going to affect the future of technological development in the region as well. The reason that we started doing what we're doing are because we saw inequalities and unequal opportunities, less support, less of a pipeline for female founders, female tech founders, female entrepreneurs, and women in general in the region. And as the more work we've done, the more that's kind of been validated, and we saw more and more work that we could potentially do with media. And the many reasons that we started doing the work that we did kind of exist in the same way still for how AI is developing. So the reason we got into supporting women and intentionally creating like network spaces and communities for female entrepreneurs and women investors and women in tech is because they did not exist before, because in many ways that we know the biases that exist in that space, as well as many other spaces, created many obstacles for women to get into that space and for investors to be interested in female tech companies and all of these things. And so in many ways, those inequalities, they still exist and they have not really been remedied, although there are more and more women founders and women entrepreneurs and female investors, the structural biases and inequalities still exist. So as this space is developing, and this space is where you will find AI development happening on different levels in different startups on a smaller scale and strategically on a government level, it's kind of taking the existing inequalities and carrying it over into this new space. And it really affects the work that women are trying to do, or people with a feminist lens are trying to work, and it's not, the same barriers are still existing. And so one of the ways we try to do that currently is by media and storytelling and content creation. And I can give an example of the work, how our work is kind of hindered already by AI and or like algorithmic decision making, because content creators, us included, we use social media platforms that have for years already been fed biased and kind of gendered data. And so in the work that we do, when we're disseminating information, trying to raise awareness, trying to change narratives and language that is used around women, around feminism, and around issues that affect both, we have found that we have less prominence on social media, for example, our main channels, with certain content that we do. So when we're doing kind of lighter content that is around lighter topics or kind of expected stories, when you're talking about female-focused storytelling, we see that the organic reach, for example, or the engagement and the kind of audience that it garners it's much easier for that content to appear on people's feeds, to do better, for us to put like a little bit of marketing money behind it and for it to reach even more people. When we get into even very kind of not super even controversial spaces or conversations around things that affect women, we see that the algorithms are built in a way where it suppresses our content and it doesn't allow us, it doesn't reach as wide of an audience, even people that follow us, obviously, and it's gotten worse and worse over the years. So the more that we try to talk about things that affect women, whether it's reproductive health, sexual health, mental health, opportunities in the different spaces, creative, tech, whatever, we see that the more we dig deeper into certain topics. For example, in this past year, we did an article, just a very kind of straightforward, you would think, article about climate change and how it affects women and minorities more. And it wasn't really, it's not something we thought would be flagged in any way, but already in just publishing it on our social media platforms, and we use like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of these spaces, we found that it was not doing so well. So we decided to put money behind it so that it can reach our already existing audience that's not seeing this come up on their platforms. And it was flagged by Facebook for being this kind of vague category of social, political, and this kind of content, which is not as easily, doesn't as easily reach a wider audience. So just in us trying to do that work where we're changing the conversation or shedding light on an issue that affects women more, we find that we're not as easily able to do our work, and the work that we do doesn't reach as wide of an audience. So this is kind of where we are now. And obviously the way that AI and EDM are developing, it's taking those structures that have already been built and amplifying them more and more and more. And so for sure, when it comes to how AI is developing in the region, we are expecting more of that. And that's also exacerbated by the fact that there is still less women in tech, women in STEM. There is still less kind of intentional investment into women getting into these spaces. But I will say that the one space where this is happening because of the combination or the intersection of like entrepreneurship, technology, and all of these things, is femtech. And femtech are like, entrepreneurs and technology startups that are focused on women issues, usually to do with women's health, women's reproductive health, women's like pregnancy, menstruation, menopause, all of the diagnostics, all of these things. And when we see these issues, because a lot of these femtech startups are mainly founded by women, so they are part of the conversation. And that's the only way to address these existing biases in any technology, whether it's the technology we're using now or the technology that's going to be developed as AI develops more, is to intentionally and very like strategically include women in those conversations at the policy level, at the execution level, at the technology development level. And for that reason, because femtech is growing in the region, so you already see that women are building their technology and their platforms with a feminist lens, because they're aware of the issues, because they're aware of the biases, and they're already addressing them either intentionally or not even unintentionally, because they just know how they want these spaces to develop. So I think what's also interesting is I reached out to some women we've worked with in the past that I know use AI in their tech, and just asking them like, where do things stand now? And they all kind of told me that what they actually need now is to talk about the existing like sexism in the spaces that they currently occupy when it comes to investors, when it comes to entrepreneurship support and all of these things. And so the way that they're also kind of, they're still stuck in that space. And as we develop further, these things need to be addressed. So as content creators trying to change narratives and trying to evolve language, we're facing issues already. And that's kind of like where we stand currently as in the work that we do and in the work that we've seen other women do as well.
Thank you very much, Amira. That was very interesting to hear, and we'll talk more. We're going to move to our second round now, where we talk about where we'd like to think about the action basically and the way forward. If there are any solutions that, I know solutions is kind of a simple word now, it's a very complicated issue, but I mean anything towards solutions, or what applications could be a good idea for applied research. As you know, like the call for proposals that the network is about to put out asks for ideas for applied research. And basically the question that we'd like to think about in this round is, how can algorithmic decision making be harnessed, despite all the issues that both you and Nadine have very eloquently identified, be harnessed to deliver more equitable outcomes for women in the region. And if I may, I know Amira, you just spoke, but I'm just gonna come back to you and ask you to just, if there's anything else you'd like to add on any ideas for solutions or applications. Now you spoke a bit about femtech. If I could also ask you, who do you think needs to come together to work together, and on what are the specific areas that they could work on? And where are examples of where applied research or piloting of some applications, where do you think they're needed based on your work at MENA?
Yeah.
Also have about 7 minutes.
Sure. I think one of the biggest things I see as something that can be addressed to bring things closer together is this huge disconnect, I think, between people working in like the feminist space or interested in those issues, and women in general, and that are working in like the tech space. There's they're almost like in silos. There isn't a lot of overlap between these two communities, unfortunately. And it's very, very important, obviously, to bring them together in a very intentional, like curated way, so that they can speak and they can share knowledge and they can actually work and collaborate together. It would be great also to bring those voices to stakeholders at a higher level when it comes to like policy and decision making, because I know that there are, in the region in general, and in Egypt in particular, there are high level like strategic visions or plans for investing in AI and how it's going to be used to build smart cities and using it in healthcare or the pension system or all of these different ways. But because we already know that a lot of times at those tables, there are not enough women present, and definitely not enough youth, and maybe not enough people that are looking at it with a feminist lens. So if ideally there is a way to bring those knowledge kind of experts and people that actually work in that space together, so that we can continue talking about or like develop the conversation further. One area that also we know in the region that data itself is lacking. So even when we talk about AI and the data that's the existing like biased data that's been fed into AI and algorithmic decision making, a lot of it is coming from the West. It's not very regional, it's not localized. Arabic language content on the internet is still not anywhere nearly compared to like English language content. So already you have a lack of data, but there are people working in that space where if you go to them and kind of, for example, I'll give a better example to kind of like illustrate what I'm trying to say. Shifa is an Egypt-based health tech startup founded by two women and led by two women, and they have a healthy mix in their growing team that works across the region of representation of women and men in the development space and tech development as data scientists and as on the rest of their team. They are a company that delivers pharmaceutical products and medicine to people with chronic illnesses, and they plan their medicine delivery, and they work in that health tech space. And in talking to them, they kind of, one of the things that they raise, because they do use AI, and they've been around for a few years. And when they started, there was no data for them to use. So they were kind of trying to do like data mining and use the data that they've, as they were developing, to develop their technology. But it wasn't until now, a few years down the line, where they have like solid data sets that are bigger, that are more representative, that are more inclusive, and where they can finally start mining that data and pulling actual insights from it. So for example, one thing they found in the region, which might not be surprising, and it's probably global as well, is that caregivers for like elderly, for families and so on, are mainly women. And so the way that they develop their app and their services and their product is to cater to that. And so they have that lens on it. So this is a startup that has grown over the past few years, and it is working across the region, has all this data. I'm not sure if that is being used or if that's being communicated to people that are trying to develop policies and trying to develop the infrastructure for AI. So that is one example. Another is a startup called Nabta Health, based in the UAE, also working in the space of women's health diagnostics and kind of trying to bridge traditional healthcare and digital healthcare. They also, by now, because they've been around for a few years, have data and have a lot of users, and they have experiences and knowledge that can be shared in developing AI, let's say in the health space. So I think that's kind of a key as we move forward, is to bring all of these players together. And whether they have done it intentionally or unintentionally, that's kind of just a byproduct of their work, to show them how important the insight they have is, and to try to merge it with infrastructure developments when it comes to AI and kind of these technological developments. So bringing them into the conversation, intentionally bringing feminists and activists into the conversation, as opposed to alienating them in the many ways that we know are kind of the region does for many political or whatever other social reasons. But they have to be parts of this conversation to just draw the framework of what is it to have a feminist lens and what are the issues. And as well as bringing that together with policymakers, entrepreneurs, tech developers, stakeholders, investors, all of these things. I think that's kind of the key when it comes to moving forward, as well as speaking out more and more, kind of like more loudly, when it comes to existing biases on the technology that we already use. Because when we speak about the MENA experience in content creation and storytelling and media, and having that technology that we use now kind of like suppress what we're trying to do and like demonetize and not allow us to reach as wide an audience, if people don't know that that's happening, then it's going to be much harder for them to grasp what's coming, as Nadine said, which is very scary, what's coming with AI and even further technological development.
Thank you very much, Amira, for these insights and action ideas for action forward and the way forward. If I can turn to Nadine and basically get your comments on that as well, Nadine, about I had some questions prepared, but I mean, I know you'd like to continue what you started off, just to help guide the conversation. What, if you would like to tell us a bit about what should AI-enabled feminist policymaking and practice look like in MENA, and how can, if these technologies, can they be harnessed by civil society and feminist movements to deliver support to women in the region. Yeah, you have 7 minutes as well. Go ahead.
Thank you. I will continue from where Amira stopped to say that I agree completely with the steps to do this colossal, huge undertaking that we need to do. And I see some questions in the Q&A that are a bit about the context here and the increasing inequalities between global South and the global North. I'll start first with this issue of women and LGBTQ and folks who don't speak English, who have not been to a university. The level of intimidation with technology is huge. So that's almost all of our region. Two, there seems to be a feeling that I kind of gauge from people like my mother, that technology is always designed the best way it possibly could be designed, right? That if Google has asked for this, it means this is it's necessary that Google needs this. If Facebook has terms and conditions like this, Facebook knows better, which is a mentality we never used to have with other technologies that we were more critical towards, perhaps because we could see them. A television, you can see it, you can take it apart. A radio, the same thing. A vacuum cleaner, it's in front of you. There seems to be sort of an ephemeral trust that tech knows best and that Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, etc., are geniuses. Where if you look in the tech policy side inside these organizations, I was just in a call with YouTube yesterday, thinking about the massive problem that YouTube has with content in Arabic, massive kind of problem, struggling to figure out what do we do about this huge kind of hateful speech on YouTube in Arabic. How do we find it? But also, do we want the corporation to be making decisions around this kind of speech? Let me try and focus. What I want to say is that we need to put in large efforts to get all the feminist movement, the tech movement, the human rights movements everywhere in the globe thinking about these questions now and urgently. بمعنى إنه no more delineation between the digital rights community or the tech rights kind of community and human rights and everyone else. And I think you folks play a very good role in that. Also building confidence in women thinking about the tech, going to spaces where tech is governed. For example, the World Wide Web Consortium, where protocol decisions are made, the Internet Governance Forum, next year happening in Japan, which excites me, to see that there are humans that make decisions around algorithms. It is not the algorithm that knows best. What are for whose benefit do these algorithms make decisions and why? Is important to break that sort of gendered lack of confidence. Because I know nothing about electricity. I have no idea how this light bulb is on right now, but I have many opinions about my right to electricity, how much I should pay for it, who gets to install it, where I should put light bulbs, etc. Somehow it hasn't translated into tech, perhaps because of the speed at which things have developed. Two, I think, unlike other areas of women's rights and social rights, where we have really focused on the context, the particularities of the context, I will venture on a limb and say that this is a battle as global as climate change. بمعنى إنه contexts will matter less and less when corporations come for all our contexts. Meaning, we live in a context where the infrastructure is terrible. The internet prices are the highest in the world. There's sanctions on a lot of countries in terms of what they can post, if they can receive payments, if they can access certain websites. يعني infrastructurally, you know better how we compare to other regions, but might be one of the worst regions in the world in terms of access to the internet, to an open kind of internet. What will happen, I predict in the future, is that Google will come with submarine cables and say, your governments have failed. Google راح تمد cable to Alexandria, to Tartus, to Beirut, to Trablus, to all the data points of an internet connection, which will make the public imagination more interested in privatization of the internet because our governments have such failure. And this is one problem that we have with women trusting the platforms to bring justice more than they trust their own judicial systems. Because if I have been sexually violated, I will feel more inclined to name and shape my harasser online and ask Instagram to deplatform them according to Instagram's algorithm and commitments. Then I feel like going to the police station and saying he's committed a crime, he should go to jail. The corporations have our movements today in a hostage situation. بمعنى إنه when we think of feminist content, we think of putting it on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. We have to move away from this model ASAP, and I realize that it's not easy to do. We've invested a lot, but Amira has shared already the problems with getting this content out there. The algorithms are not designed for us influencing discourse. The algorithms are designed for an attention economy and a data mining economy. You can say whatever you want, the algorithm doesn't care, as long as it can do two things. One, gather as much data as possible about the population. We're talking billions of people. Two, read the data in interesting ways to serve the kind of economy that is coming. Both of which we do not have neither the server power to collect these amounts of data. We're talking about server farms. And two, the software, that's my 7 minutes, to be able to read this data. So we're really up against a massive kind of undertaking. The only utopic view I can look at is if all of our movements are working on this issue. It's not specialized people, it's not experts, it's not only think tanks, but somehow we go back to all our movements. Unions, for example, are unions ready for automation that's coming? No, of course not. Labor laws. I saw in your papers there was an evaluation of Egypt's labor laws and whether they control the companies. The labor laws in the future are irrelevant. There will be laws on the blockchain adopted by all of these companies that they adhere to, and we will have very little ability to say Wizarat al-Amal, Ministry of Labor. Think of every Arab Minister of Labor and tell me if they have any idea what is happening with AI going forward. So just to say in a global movement, global battle, I will stop.
All right, thank you, Nadine, and thank you, Amira. And I think we'll have a quick Q&A, and then perhaps maybe 1 minute wrap up from each speaker. I'm looking at the Q&A. We have Dr. Manal Jaloul. May I ask you to, would you like to make a comment? Yeah, that would be great. Dr. Manal Jaloul is from the founder of AI Labs in Lebanon, if I'm correct. Go ahead, Dr. Manal.
So hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me. I'm
Yes.
sorry, there's kind of background noise. I'm not sitting in a private place. Anyways, I love the webinar and thank you so much for your invitation, inviting me to attend. Something I'd like to remark on, there's perhaps an urgent need for us to build an open data platform to host data sets from the MENA region, data sets that we produce ourselves for people, researchers, AI, in the field can actually use to produce AI models for our region, rather than just rely on technologies that the Western community is producing there is an urgent need to establish kind of this open data platform similar to what the EU has established, so we could follow their footsteps, and this portal can host governmental data, private entities data, academic institutions data sets that everybody can be using in our region in order to democratize AI and reduce the biases, perhaps introduce Arabic data sets, so we could innovate in the space more if we make the data available for everybody.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Manil. That's very well taken. I have some questions in the Q&A, but if anyone would like to raise their hand, yeah, so I have, sorry. Oh, okay. Oh, Dr. Nagla, would you like to ask a question?
No, it's okay. I mean, go ahead and I'll wait for my turn. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm checking out the Q&A. We have a question here. It has an acronym, so excuse me if I don't know what this acronym is. The question is there any action plan to address the increasing DGBV? I don't know what that is. That aims to emptying the internet of women after the growing visibility women gained during COVID. I'm not sure if Nadine...
I think it's a digital gender-based violence.
Oh, sorry, yes, thank you.
My question, but I know the acronym, so.
All right, do any of our speakers or have anything they'd like to say to that? Are there any action plans to address digital gender-based violence?
Unfortunately, I don't think there are solid plans. And if anything else, the past couple of years have actually shown us how much it exists, and it's actually getting to be a bigger problem than it was before. What's happening is the contrary, is that the use of social media is exacerbating existing tendencies or mindsets that lead to gender-based violence. And because social media is actually, like, in the way that I was talking about before, and it suppresses like feminist content, maybe sometimes it somehow does the opposite when it comes to like inciting hate and anger. And we've seen how that's developed since the summer and over the past few months in the MENA region when it comes to gender-based violence, not even in the domestic space only, but also in a public space. So there's a lot of struggles with that. It's become more of a problem than it has been in the past, and it's become more on a public forum. And as far as I know, there aren't like solid action plans in that on how to combat it, except also initiatives or conversations that are again led by women, and the burden is on women and feminists to raise the awareness and kind of raise all the red flags, to shout for help and say that this is a problem. And they're not getting much support as far as I know. I'm not sure what Nadine also from her perspective thinks.
Just to say very quickly that we must be careful not to conflate the internet with the corporations on the internet. When people leave platforms, now we have a Twitter exit because of Elon Musk, and because obviously he will enact very racist and sexist policies. People are leaving a platform. And if the internet is this big, the corporations are tiny little privatized spaces of the platform. But the internet, we must remember, is open and huge, and we can build different ways to connect and to talk and to express that are not hostage or رهينة لهيدا particular platform. So if people leave Facebook because of trolls, it's terrible that this has to happen, but also maybe then there's other spaces where one can more safely build up their content and their stories, tell their stories with more safety than on these platforms. Others will answer, but Nadine, everyone is on that platform, which is also not true. This is a lie they have fed us, like many lies they feed us to keep advertising on these platforms. It's not true. And if I don't have a Facebook platform, how can I not reach the women? Bilaks, perhaps not having a platform will encourage me to think of ways to build my audience without having to deal with the rush of misogyny and hatred and abuse at the same time.
I'll add to that also that because of our dependency on these different platforms, over the past years, we kind of stopped talking to each other in real life about important issues, and whatever big opinions we have, we tried, or many people try to post it more in like a public way and engage with their audience or their friends or their family online. And because of the development of like how gender-based violence has kind of as its topic has become more prominent in the last few months, I do see more women now, unlike, which I haven't seen in like a decade maybe, talking more amongst themselves and in their own circles and creating spaces where they can speak about these issues. And that's actually very important. We've forgotten how important that level of just normal human interaction is, but also as the starting point of these are women that work in different spaces. So if they have a safe offline space to talk about these things and to maybe in very minimal ways organize or say like put out a statement or have like a collective thing that they want to say individually on their own social media, like that's also very important. And we need to go back to that a little bit because these spaces are becoming unsafe.
Thank you, Amira, and thank you, Nadine. I think Dr. Neka, you had your hand up. Do you want to? I think you're going to answer questions.
Thank you, Nadine. I see a lot of questions, and my question was more of putting them together, and maybe I want to address Nadine. I see a question from Leslie Chen. Hi, Leslie. About he writes, I understand the argument for making data more open for sharing as a means to democratize access and decision making. But would this also open up more data for the corporate actors to take advantage of because they have the resources and infrastructure? Now, I see this not unrelated to the question about data collection methodologies to be more feminist or to take a question of the context of the region. So I guess I'm asking Nadine Mawad, who I'm a big fan of, is how can we get out of this? I mean, where is the way out? What is the solution? If we were to take one tiny step within our work, within the FAIR network, we're putting up proposals. What would you do to address all these issues which are in those questions, but also which you have very eloquently talked to us about? Thank you.
I honestly don't know. I come here to think with you. I think we need more people thinking. Someone suggested more AI specialists thinking with us. More creative people thinking with. I think what you're doing in terms of discussing and thinking is necessary for us to figure out how we kind of do it. And I want to say something about this question of open data and whether the corporations use it by going back to internet protocols as I think a good example. So, you know, when you visit a website, you put HTTP. The reason you can use any browser to visit the website is because there's a protocol, an open protocol that allows any company to develop a browser. It's the same with email. The reason you can send email from any company to any other company is because there is SMTP protocol. With the messaging, texting, the protocol is, there is no protocol that's open, it's closed. So every company, I can only chat in Zoom, I can only chat in WhatsApp, I can only chat in Messenger. Why can't we send messages from one company to the other? Because BlackBerry shut down the open protocol for chatting, so that now we cannot chat across different platforms. I'm using this as an example to say, when there is openness, it's okay for a corporation to use. Yani let them use. How much are they going to use? At least we are on an equal kind of footing with them. Corporations can use Wikipedia for their research, and so can we. It's important that the data democratized opens up possibilities for all of us to use it. And also a point about the cities, if I may. I'm very, very fascinated that you have mentioned smart feminist cities, because it seems to be that the future of governance are smart cities. You can see Saudi Arabia building smart cities. Egypt, I think you are building smart cities. It's the first time I hear someone say smart feminist cities. But I think we might be going back to the age of the Roman Empire, where there are many cities that have an allegiance. Carthage, Constantinople, Byblos, the kind of world where it's not country-based, but city-based. and what does it mean to have governance, maybe on the blockchain or contracts? Your contract, your citizenship is coded into a sort of program, rather than you go to the Mukhtar and the Muhammad, the lawyer, and vote for your MP, etc. I will stop here because I'm out of time. Sorry to be all over the place, but this is the topic at hand.
No, I wish we had much more time. This is very interesting conversation. And I think, though, that we're about to run out of time. I'm sorry if we didn't manage to answer everything in the Q&A, but I know that people have places to get to and other things on their to-do lists for the day. I'll just ask Dr. Nagla if you'd like to say any final...
Well, let me just thank everyone. Thank you, Nadine. Thank our speakers, Caitlin, Suraj, Amira, Nadine, and also Manal for her intervention. Everyone who has joined and participated. Of course, also the wonderful A2K4D team. The AI network, and especially the FAIR network and Feminist AI network, and Khadija also was, the soldier behind all this work as well. I just want to bring everyone's attention to the call for papers that's coming in January, so please stay tuned. Nadine, we want you in, we'll figure out a way. Amira, everyone, Manal, everyone here on the call, and everyone in the audience, please look out for the call for proposals. We definitely want to engage everyone. You have heard how, and you know how interdisciplinary this is, how much we stand to learn from each other. So my thanks go to each and everyone. Wonderful discussion as always, and looking forward to the next steps. Thank you very much, Nadine, team, everyone. Have a great evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you are. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.